happiness needs courage, which is a great idea. But when you're young, I was thinking when you're 5 years old or 15 years old, at that age, happiness does not need courage. You are genuinely happy, and it's easy to find happiness. But later, yeah, later one has to make a choice of finding happiness. And I believe a lot of that has to do with you, of course. It has to do with the world. It also has to do with how privileged were you, not only in terms of social status, but in terms of your genetic makeup. I believe there are genes of happiness that help you be happy. But you know, the good news is even if 60% of your happiness quotient is defined by your genes, the other 40% is in your hands. And I think that's where courage comes in to find and claim that 40% of happiness that is deservedly ours. And I think a lot of it has to do, whether we are happy or not, has to do with what we do and why we do it. And I think that why is a very important point, because what we do, of course, we have a body and we need to feed it and we need to clothe it. And for that, one needs a little money. So, a part of what we do is to provide that. But a bigger part should be for something else, for some other reasons. And I think if we find, again, if we're lucky enough to find what makes us happy, that's the greatest gift. And I really hope all of you fight for it and all of you manage to find where your happiness truly lies and you find it. I was talking earlier of finding out and being fortunate to find out what makes you happy. I think I knew by the age of 16 or something that I want to make films. I'm not very sure how I arrived at that decision, but I was very clear at 16. Maybe like a fantasy, but that's what I saw myself doing. And pretty much the rest of my life I have spent trying to do that. And everything else that happened to me, including acting, was an accident. So like you said, I wanted to make films. I went to film school to study film direction. And then that's what I've been doing. I've been writing and trying to find money and trying to find a release. That's what has occupied me. And in all of that, sometimes I act and sometimes I do theatre. See, I'll tell you, like everybody else, you start with Bollywood. So I remember films that made a big impact on me was Diwar in 1974 or 73. Okay, so I was 13, 14 years old. That film made a big impact on me, which maybe it's Bachchan, maybe it's the writing or whatever it was. And there were other films like Bobby, an occasional film that left an impact. By the age of 16, I had started college and I joined a film society run by Mr. Pankaj Bhutalia called Celluloid. And at 16, I was introduced to world cinema in a way that that never left me. I remember watching Herzog, Fata Morgana, and I was blown by it, you know. I didn't understand it, but I was blown by it. To realize that this can happen with cinema. And Fassbinder and Godard and Bergman, so that all that came by the age of 16 to me. And then you realize, oh my God, film is not just this, but also this. And then that made me even more interested than I was earlier. I think very early, besides Hollywood, I'm not talking Hollywood, of course, Taxi Driver made a big impact on me. It was released. I mean, how bizarre is that? That a film like Taxi Driver in the mid-70s was released in India. And then so did Godfather, and then other Hollywood films, of course. But international films, I think Godard was a early love. And so was Fassbinder, who is not very well known outside the art cinema circuit. But Fassbinder really drew me very much at that time. Very independent, very, I don't know if quirky is the word, but very twisted almost, kind of sensibility. And then I found it fascinating. Also, what he did with the camera and his actors, almost theatrical and yet very cinematic. I remember the day I got admission into FTII. I thought this was the best day of my life. I was thrilled, I can't tell you. I still remember the joy of having gotten admission in FTII. I thought, okay, this is my life starts now, my journey begins now. Really excited. And the first few months, I think, couple of months, you're just impressed by the presence of that place and people around you. And you say, yeah, this is where I want to be. And there are films every day, you're watching films, you're thinking films, you're talking films. But slowly you start realizing, like you said, that there are so many giants around you in the world cinema and in Indian cinema, and that you know nothing. And that's a terrible feeling. It's you feel incapable. You think you know nothing and you'll never be able to make a good film. So these horrors haunt you. Also, FTI was a very lonely place. I mean, it's a great place, but it's a very lonely place. So you have to spend those 3 years trying to battle your demons. And after that, I was lucky enough to work with Kumar and Mani for 3 years. And I think I learned a lot more with them than I did at FTI. The FTI was a great journey, and I'll never denounce it. It was really, really fantastic. Thank you for asking that very pertinent question, Sachin. But I think the longest and the hardest journey for an artist is to find his voice. And it really takes time. It takes time. If you're lucky, like Godard, you can find it in your first film, or Satyajit Ray with Pathir Panchali. But normally it takes years of struggle to figure out who you really are and what your cinema is and what is it that you want to talk about and what is your way of talking about it, Yeah, it took me about 10 years. I was completely under the influence of Kumar and Mani, with Tarana, my first short film, of course. Even Private Detective, my first feature film, which was very different in terms of genre from Mani or Kumar's film, but they were sitting on my shoulder, very heavy. And I think it's with Raghu Romeo and then a play I did around that time, C for Clown, that I finally started to find my own voice. And I will add something to that, that in fact I feel, I don't know about others, that I make films to keep finding out who I am, and that is the process. So it's not that I am this person and so I'm making a film like this. It is the fact that I make this film and then I discover why I made that film and what does that mean about me and who I am. So my journey of discovery now is through the work that I do. These awards are very gratifying because it's like a validation, but eventually it means nothing. It means nothing to what you do. It means nothing to why you do it. Like I said, if somebody likes your work, even if it's somebody in this audience or a national award film jury, it feels good for some time. But you don't do anything for those reasons. You do what you do because there is a compulsion making you do it, and everything else comes later. If it gets an award, great. If it makes lots of money, very good. But if it doesn't make any money, and if it doesn't get any award, and nobody likes it, it still doesn't matter, because this is what you wanted to do. This, even beyond that, it's not that you want to do it. It's something that is pushing you to do it. So you are really the medium. The idea is stronger than who you are.
Question is not question, but I want to say that just now you mentioned that OTT, like they are showing lots of crap. I understand that. But one more thing I admire about OTT, that it had recognized and given the identity to many of the small actors. Those are like actual actors, and they're good at acting, but they were not that famous or popular. But now because of OTT, they also got to show their talent.
That is right. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right
Like-
about that. There are lots of many new kind of characters which were not written for the mainstream commercial cinema. They have become possible.
Yeah.
So actors like Jaideep Alawat or
True.
Pratik Gandhi, they have made it big because of the OTT. That's
Correct.
true.
Like, the series like Good Luck, Panchayat, they all like, because we have variety of like audience. So now because of OTT, we are able to satisfy
You're right, you're right. But Gullak and Panchayat is doing what Doordarshan used to do in the 80s with Hum Log
But it's still-
and Nukkad and so on.
Correct, but we are it's like a cycle. So
Absolutely.
we are liking that because of some reason, because kind of calmness and soothing, those things like we are able to connect the feelings also. So I feel OTT is a good platform, but now just now you mentioned like people are controlling over there.
So how do you draw a line between what you want to create and what the audience wants to see? Because at the end of the day, this is a show business, right? So because there are many contents which some filmmakers wanted to create, which they did, but it didn't work out quite well because the audience wanted to see something else. Like for example, recently Joker 2 was released. So because of that. So I just had a question, how do you draw that line?
I don't draw that line. I don't do anything for the audience in that sense. Like I said earlier, it's terrible to try and think what you want to see. How do I know what you want to see? Yaar? I don't know. So who am I? I think it's very presumptuous on my part to say, okay, this is what the audience wants to see. How do I know? I only know it based on what worked 6 months back, which is stupid, and it is, first of all. Secondly, I'm not making a film for commercial gains. My belief is I have to, when I'm making a film or writing a script, it has to engage me. It has to work for me, And I believe I've not come from Mars or Pluto. So if it works for me, there must be some people that it will work for, I have to trust me. I have to trust my instinct. I have to trust my vision and go so completely with it that it doesn't matter what the audience wants. Audience with an inverted comma. Because there is no one such audience. This cliche has been used forever as an excuse for making bad films. From the 70s, 60s. We are making this because the audience wants it. Bullshit. You never gave the audience a chance. How do you know? You only kept making bad films, bad films, bad films. And you said this is what the audience wants. That's not true.
So you should take the risk and create what you want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For me, I'll tell you frankly, there are 5 people in this world whose opinion I respect. I want them to like my film. Beyond these 5 people, if the 6th person likes it, it's a bonus. It's a bonus. But if I can please these 5 people, I'm very happy. And I'm one of those 5.
Thank you, sir.